You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. You also can catch us on wherever you listen to podcasts. That can be Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcast, Odyssey, and YouTube. Just be sure to hit the follow button and subscribe. For you first-time listeners wondering about our channel and how it works, we bring you episodes Monday through Friday, 30-minute episodes, as well as 60-second YouTube shorts, as many as we can. Unfortunately, I'm involved in a wedding this weekend, so not really able to get them up or in a timely manner. The good news is we always have the Royals postcast, which is hosted by Chance Lebo. He comes to you live for 15 minutes after each and every Royals game, so you can look for that at the conclusion of tonight's game between the Royals and the Dodgers. Before we get started into our mailbag questions, want to let you know that today's show is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off on your first purchase. And for our Mailbag Fridays, you can always reach out to me on Twitter, direct message me, or just respond to the tweet that I put out there. And you can also just leave it on any of our YouTube videos below. Try to get it closer to Friday. That's probably the best way it can get incorporated into the episode. If you put one for today's show to be answered next Friday, we get a lot of notifications throughout the week, so it might slip through the cracks. But if I missed anybody, you can always just respond to this YouTube video again and ask the question, and I'll be sure to answer it by the end of the weekend. So let's get to question number one, coming from Elizabeth. I saw somebody suggest in a comment here on your channel that we should trade two of our lefties from the bullpen, leaving only Sam Long. For a guy who has more strikeouts than walks and only has 9 home runs and is hitting .232 from the Rangers, isn't that a little overkill? So I'm assuming you're talking about Adolis Garcia here. That would be my best guess. I would say that it would take a little bit more than just those two lefties and Angel Serpa and Daniel Lynch to go after Adolis Garcia. If the Royals were to trade a bullpen arm, you're probably looking at John Schreiber because he's a rental. If you really wanted the high upside trade, you'd probably look into moving Steven Cruz because relievers can be so volatile and they're going to have a great year one year. They might be bad the next year. You just don't really know, and you want to capitalize and maximize on all of that value. As for Carlos Estevez, he's under contract for 2 more years, and I still feel that the Royals are intending to win next year, and they view Carlos Estevez being a part of that. So with those two lefties, if they were to move one, I'd probably say it's more likely that Serpa does because he has been involved in trade rumors before. But I don't think they would trade both of them and only keep Sam Long on the roster. DJ Max question, when does that flip switch when you buy or sell? If we plan on buying, why not make a move before the All-Star break? This team, I believe, will not make it to the deadline and be buyers the last week of July. Well, it takes 2 teams to trade. If you are going to be a team that is going to try to make a move before the deadline, you got to find somebody that's just as desperate as you are. And if the Royals are going to be selling pieces, they can start promoting some of their players, at least behind the scenes, into other front offices that they would be willing to move Seth Lugo. They'd be willing to move Michael Lorenzen. And then if that team's desperate enough, you can always strike on a deal. But I hate to say it because it's really hard to believe it at this point. I don't see them being definitive sellers at this point when they're 3.5 games back. I sound like a broken record in saying that. I'm more so going off of what I believe the front office is looking at, and they would feel that as of June 27th, they don't need to sell their pieces when they're only 3.5 games back of a wild card spot. Good question, though. Next one is coming from Dylan. What would be your ideal 7, 8, 9 back end of the bullpen? I would like to see Estevez, Cruz, and Ursig, partly because that anime thing that Estevez does after saves is so dumb. I guess that's one way to go about it. I would say the 7th, 8th, and 9th for me would be Steven Cruz, Lucas Ursig, and then Carlos Estevez. I mean, the guy is one of the top save leaders in all of baseball. Don't really want to move him off that spot. I like to have Lucas Ursig in the setup role, and Steven Cruz can bridge that gap. Right now, though, I guess we can't really worry too much about the back end of the bullpen because they got to start scoring some runs if it's ever going to matter with those guys in the game. Next one's from KC United. Excluding Salvi, what one player from 2015 would you bring back to join this team for a push. I would absolutely say Lorenzo Cain, and that's not even a second guess for me. I mean, with the state of the Royals outfield, to add a player like that, who I believed was the best player on 2014 and 2015, or at least for those runs, Lorenzo Cain in the heartbeat. That's not even one I have to think too much about. Elizabeth has another one. Have you heard any rumors they actually had offers to trade Freddie Fermin to someone? I have not, and I wouldn't expect them to. With Salvador Perez being at his age, they want Freddie Fermin to be very involved in that lineup. So unless they did get a great deal, a great offer for Freddie Fermin, I'd imagine he's not going anywhere at this coming trade deadline. Next one is from Bing. Can you give us a potential roster move to get this team back on track? Love the podcast. By the way, your takes are amazing, and it makes my day a little better after this stretch of Royals losses. Well, appreciate the kind words. We always hope we can bring some joy when the team's playing as poorly as they are right now. I would say a few roster moves that would make sense for this team. I really like Alex Call in Washington. Even though he's not a power hitter, he doesn't hit the ball incredibly hard. He gets on base at a high clip, and I feel he would be affordable considering he's 30 years old. You could probably put him out there in center field to replace Kyle Isbell, and then you go out there and try to get Kyle Stowers. You go out there and try to get a Jesus Sanchez. You try to go out there, maybe go after Dane Myers in Miami, if not going for Kyle Stowers. You need some league average bats in the lineup, and I really believe that can go a long way. 3 out of your 9 spots in the lineup have league average numbers or above that. Michael Garcia, Vinny Pasquantino, and Bobby Witt Jr. Everybody else is below league average. You add 2 more to that lineup, I guarantee you they can jump up a few spots from where they're at right now. Is it good enough to get them to the postseason? I guess we will certainly find out. Next one is from Dave. How many AAA guys do you think will get DFA'd or traded before next year? I would have to go and dive into all the contract numbers for each of those guys, going into spring training, how many options they have. I would say, though, in AAA, there are a few guys that I'm starting to wonder if they're just going to be AAA depth for the rest of their career. There's really not one in Kansas City. But I would say there's a chunk of them, right? The ones that have been floating around at the minor league level for a long time. Tyler Gentry's one of them. I'd be curious if the Royals added players to the roster where John Rave fits in. Nick Lofton, I believe, will always have a spot somewhere in Kansas City. Maybe not always, because they could go after another utility guy. But being a utility guy and a super utility player, that's going to give you a leg up over some of the outfielders that just aren't hitting that much right now. So I would need to do more of a deep dive into that. It comes down to options. They're not going to just outright release guys that aren't playing that well. I mean, they'd have to be someone that was well beyond their prime, mid-30s. Like, if Rich Hill never gets called up, then he would be one of the guys that's outright released at the end of the year. But I don't see that happening either. I think he'll get a shot somewhere just because he's still trying to make it happen. If it's not in Kansas City, it'll definitely be somewhere else. Let's jump over to Twitter here and get the question from Dro. How do you feel about the pick going around of Cags playing Fortnite, which was posted by Vinny? In my opinion, it's absolutely fine to take a break from thinking baseball 24/7, but during these downtimes, maybe now isn't the best time to share that. Yeah, I would say on the sharing side of things, maybe not the best look, but these are guys that don't need to be playing and thinking about baseball 24/7, even in downtimes, even in down stretches. I mean, it's late at night. Yeah, you'd like to say they could be in the cages working, but who's to say they weren't doing that before and after the game, and now they're back home just relaxing. It's a long season, and it's a grind, and I just will never fault players for also being, humans, and I know that's what you're saying as well. They had some downtime. They're trying to relax. They're about to have a 3-game series with the Dodgers at 10, 11 o'clock at night. I don't really have too much of an issue with it. Next one is from Jeff. I had one last night, but can't remember it. Heck, I think I may have sent it last night, but can't find it. Anyway, have a good day and a great weekend. Same to you, Jeff. MJ Melendez believer, forget the Royals. What is the best cut of French fry? I really do love French fries. I would say crinkle cut are always the ones to go with. Like, I love Culver's French fries, but then I love McDonald's French fries, which are not crinkle cut at all. I can pretty much eat any type of French fry. I like the steak fries as well. That might be my final answer, even though it's incredibly rare other than Red Robin to get them. Steak fries would probably be my favorite ones that I go with. If not, then I go crinkle cut. And by the way, on mailbag questions, they don't have to be about the Royals. They could be about anything, as long as it's PG, because I can't get in trouble with my bosses if I say anything that would be crossing the line. This one is from Supreme Ball Knower. We do have another one that is not pertaining to the Royals. Favorite cut of meat? I'm going to go with brisket. Always has been, always will be. Brenda's question, is this offense the worst in history? Why are the offenses for KC teams so painful to watch? Fair question. I don't believe this is the worst offense that I've seen. Statistically, they're pacing to be one of those worst offensive teams. But the talent in the lineup, like that's my difference here is you have some teams that were really bad and had bad offenses, and there was very few games where I thought they could get something rolling. This is still an offense that has the talent to be much better than they are right now. Unfortunately, we're 81 games in. What they've done so far is what we have to go off of. But I do see them getting better at some point. The big question is when. I see them getting into more of a consistent level, but is it in August and September when they might be out of it at that point? That's going to be the question that we ask ourselves for the duration of the second half. But I believe the last part of that question was, why are they so painful to watch? I believe it's a philosophy thing. Even going back to the World Series winning teams, and it does look good when you are winning a lot of baseball games, it's this philosophy of put the ball in play. And when you're not getting base hits, when you're not moving runners over, it looks ugly because you have these starters with low pitch counts. You're not hitting the ball incredibly hard. You're hitting it right at people, and it's not producing any runs. I believe it is absolutely, the approach at the plate, and it has been for a long time. But it has worked before, which is why I believe that it's never really changed in Kansas City. They've stayed pretty consistent with putting the ball in play, and you limit the amount of strikeouts that you have over the course of 162. Let's get to one more here from Marty. Would you pick up Salvy's option for 26 or buy him out? Man, that is going to be one of the top headlines of the Royals offseason. Hopefully they can go out there and acquire some more offensive help. But is Salvy's time in Kansas City going to come to an end? If he has a strong second half, I'd imagine that he will be a Royal next year. It would have to be a really bad finish in the final 81 games for it to be the final year in Kansas City for Salvador Perez. But I would say it's all going to come down to these final 81 games for Salvy. Let's take our first break of the show. When we come back, still a lot of questions to get to next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter at JohnnyJ_15. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. That's exactly where Gametime comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come with you. Gametime makes it possible. Gametime makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop closer you get to first pitch. They've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off on your first purchase. Those terms apply. So again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB, LOCKEDONMLB, for $20 off. Download the app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Our next question is going to be coming from Tyler. Have they thought about calling Pedro Serrano to do some voodoo magic on the bats? Well, I'm hoping they're trying to do something before this series with the Dodgers because you have the number one offense in baseball coming in, and you've scored one run in the last 3 games. And if I go back to Saturday, because they haven't won in a week, and they've had a 6-game losing streak, and then there was the 4-game winning streak, and then a 5-game losing streak. Tired of seeing this up and down. I just would rather have the consistency and a bunch of series wins. And I know it's asking for a lot, but they got to do something. They got to do something that just changes the morale. And it's got to be more than just winning a game. You almost have to have this, the way you win, right? We saw last year so many times he's come from behind wins for the Royals. It sparked them into the next week. And if you find a way to get it done against the Dodgers, maybe that can give you some momentum going into that West Coast road trip and taking on the Seattle Mariners and then the Arizona Diamondbacks. This one is from Eli. What is your opinion on the Zumwalt DMs? Something that the organization would actually care about, or just unprofessional and weak? Well, I would say that it's never a good thing when you see coaches online and they're allowed to have social media presences. That's never been, a big gripe of mine. If you do have a social media presence, I just always believe there's a way to go about it, right? If you are getting criticism, like it happens in sports. We all know that. It happens even in media, right? You have people that really don't like you and they'll leave bad comments and you're terrible at your job. And unfortunately, when you are a coach for a team that's struggling, you're going to get a lot of criticism and you're going to have people that are calling for your job. It's not a good look, that's for sure. I don't know what the organization makes of it. I would guarantee that's probably the last time that he does it. Now that it's been out there in the open, there was the proof of it. So I would say that no, it's not a good look. I'm not sure what the organization thought of it, to be honest with you. But no, I don't believe it's a good look because anytime you have that, it shows that a player or a coach is very active after the game and seeing what's said about them. When you just got to tune that out, you got to block it out. And sometimes being too online can change your mood, can change your personality. And I know that Alex Zumwalt is not liking what's happening. Nobody's liking what's happening, but it can change in an instant. I can say that about baseball and really over the course of 162. Have a good week, have 2 good weeks, and we're not talking about it as much. Next one is from looks like Blaze. What do you think Seth Lugo would get back in a trade? Do you think they could get Owen Cassey from the Cubs? I do think that is a player they would ask for if Seth Lugo is being dealt to Chicago. Like, it is going to be a high asking price for the Dodgers or for the Cubs. And I believe those teams would fork over the money. If that was the offer on the table and you maybe got one other throw-in player, I believe it's worth it. You could do what the Tigers did last year with Jack Flaherty. You trade Seth Lugo, you bring in somebody that you can plug into your big league lineup, and then next offseason, if you want him back, you can always re-sign him. But that's going to be one of the talking points going into the deadline. We discussed it earlier in the week with Jeff Passan and Kylie McDaniel's article. Seth Lugo is a top 10 trade chip. And if you're still hovering, like, I believe you could also look at a world where Cole Reagans gets healthy and then you've got 6 guys in the rotation again, and you're 2 games back, 3 games back. Maybe you do push the chips in, and maybe it sounds like I'm changing my opinion, but you say, okay, we're going to move Seth Lugo now that Reagans is back. Maybe Michael Lorenzen is just pitching better. Of course, Lugo is still one of the top arms on your entire team, but you need offensive help. And if that was an offer, I would seriously consider it because having a young, controllable bat like that for a long time can make you feel good about next year's offense. Next one here is from Bobblehead Redo Guy. Trade targets for the Royals, or are we just interested in real estate decisions? Horrible to think that we would not make offensive moves and just waste a great starting rotation. I feel that one way or another, they are going to make a move to bolster the offense, and that's if they're buying or they're selling. Like, I've been thinking about this for about the last week of if they're going to buy, who they're going to go after. If they sell, who are they going to try to go after? Which teams are they going to target? And even if the Royals are slipping even more than they are right now, going toward the deadline, they are going to try and acquire talent that will be there next year and will maybe be there for the second half of the season. We just talked about, the top prospect in the Cubs system or the Dodger system. I believe it's the Cubs. I can't think off the top of my head here. But if you were to get a top prospect that's ready to play the big leagues and you were to deal Seth Lugo, that's still trying to help out this team, though you are seriously subtracting a big piece of your rotation. But one way or another, buying or selling, I feel they are going to try to add to this lineup by the trade deadline, by the end of July. Next one is from Ed. At this point of the season, what letter grade do you give the Royals and why? It's got to be a C minus for sure. I know for some of you out there, you would say an F or you would say a D minus. The reason I say a C minus is basically just where they're at in the wild card standings. If they were where Baltimore's at, which is a few games behind that, I would give it a D minus. But since they are 3.5 games back, they're 38 and 43. They've had really good pitching, a really good bullpen. I can acknowledge that and also say that Oh, the offense has been horrific. So you have A minus from the pitching staff, maybe even just a flat out A. You've got an F or a D minus, probably more so an F with the offense. Smash them together, I'll give it a C minus to a D plus, kind of in that range. Because this was a team that thought they'd be contending for the division, and right now they just need to worry about getting back to 500. This one's from American. If you sell Lugo, how young do the prospects have to be, or do you think they will be major league ready bats? I believe that it's going to be major league ready bats. I don't see the Royals trading Seth Lugo for, 20-year-old or 21-year-old that's in high A or double A because the Royals do want to win next year. So if they're going to be trading away one of their top pieces, I would imagine that it would be for, you know, multiple guys that can help them right now and can help them next year. That's really the only way I could see them moving Seth Lugo. Same way the Tigers did it with Jack Flaherty. They brought in Trey Sweeney. They did get a throw-in prospect that, was going to be at a lower level in their system. But you want talent that can help you right now and can help you next year. Their window is still open. Even if they don't make it this year, they're going to look to next year and say that we need to do more to bolster this offense, and acquiring major league ready bats is one way of doing that. This one is from Jason, then we'll take our final break of the show. How much harder is it to do your job when we are so bad on offense and losing a lot of games? As fans, when we are terrible, we can take a break from it because some of us get too angry like myself, but you can't because it's your job. It's a part of it. I love baseball. I love watching the Royals. I love covering the Royals. So that's always going to be a constant. Don't get me wrong. It's not as enjoyable as when this team is playing well. It hasn't been as enjoyable as last year when we're talking about them being buyers no matter what. But it's a part of the gig, and it's a part of doing this daily of I've watched much worse teams in my life. It's different, of course, when you have expectations and you want that team to do better. But I would say that the energy I try to bring to all these episodes, it should remain the same. I wouldn't be doing my job in a proper way otherwise. If I was missing days just because they were losing, well, then you would have every right to go when they're winning. Why would I watch him? Why would I watch him if he's only going to be here when the team's playing well and he's only going to put effort into doing this show? But I love the question. I get it a lot of, man, do you get tired of doing this when they're not playing well? There are certainly days that it's not fun to think of segments and stuff, but I always try to stick through it because I know there could be better times on the horizon. Okay, we're going to take our final break of the show. When we come back, we will wrap it up with our final set of questions next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can catch us on wherever you listen to your podcast daily. Our final set of questions is going to begin with Levi. The offense isn't this bad, is it? They will come out of this, right? That's a question I've been asking myself for the better part of 2 months. And I can say it probably started on opening day when you just didn't feel great about the offense. Then they had the explosion with their 10 or 11 runs in Milwaukee for game one, and then they didn't score in game two and game three, it felt like. It's just been such a bad offense for 81 games. But I will say this, and as you've heard me say before, so I always will sound like a broken record, this offense has too much talent in it to be the lowest scoring team in baseball, below the Rockies, below the Pirates. Like, there's no way, and maybe there is a way, because we've seen it for 81 games. But with an offense that has Jonathan India, who's basically been a league average bat for 4 years, an MVP level player in Bobby Witt Jr., Vinny Pasquantino is a league average bat, Salvador Perez, I get there can be regression, but Salvador Perez in that lineup can at least be a slightly below league average bat with power. Jack Caglione, one of the top prospects in the sport. I get that there are other holes in this lineup, but last year, I go back to last year, it was not a perfect offense, but they were middle of the pack. And this team, I feel, could be 20th. And if they get to 20th in runs scored per game, they are probably going to have a really good chance of getting into the postseason. But right now, they are playing like the worst offense in baseball. And unfortunately, to your question, can they be this bad? I'm going to choose to believe they're not this bad, but this is the randomness of baseball. There absolutely is a world in which they never figure it out. And they're a bottom five offense for the entire year, and they miss the postseason by multiple games. The next one here is from Freddie Fermin, actually, not the actual player, just somebody that's Twitter name is Freddie Ferminator Fermin. Is there any fixing this offense, or is it too far gone to be saved this season? with the All-Star break coming up, we're digging ourselves into a hole that's getting harder to jump out of. Absolutely. I mean, you can only say there's time for so long. And as much as I would love to sit here and spew the positivity of they are only 3.5 games back and it takes a good week to get back into the hunt, because last Saturday they were a half game out of a playoff spot. Think about how quickly things changed in a week. And they've played good teams, but that can't be an excuse. And there is time to fix the offense, but when does that fix happen? Are they going to hit their stride now in this Dodger series and carry it into the All-Star break, or will it be in the second half? If they can be within 3 games of a playoff spot, that's going to be the goal for me watching. If they can be 3 games back of a playoff spot by the All-Star break, I believe it's the perfect time to just reset. You get the entire week off, go enjoy the All-Star game, go enjoy the home run derby, and then get your mind right coming back. They'll be in Miami right after that, and we'll see if they've made any moves. But getting to the All-Star break, still within striking distance, is vitally important for this team. But they got to play well in this series against the best team in baseball, in my opinion, and then they're going to have to play well on a very tough road trip where Seattle, a team that's ahead of you, and Arizona, who's just got a ridiculous offense as well. Bobby Witt Jr.'s burners question, and we'll probably have to hustle a little bit more. Is there a chance we are sellers at the deadline? If so, is everyone on the table except for Bobby and Jack? There is a world in which they're a seller. I would say there's going to be more untouchables than just Bobby and Jack. I would be pretty surprised if they were listening to offers for Michael Garcia. It feels they really want those two to be the left side of the infield for the foreseeable future. Michael Walker's under contract. I don't see them trading him. I don't see them moving Cole Reagans. It would take an absolute haul to trade Chris Bubich. I said before, I just don't see them trading Carlos Estevez because they want him back next year, and then he'd have a player option or a team option after that. So I would say that there are a little bit more untouchables, or a few more untouchables on this team than just Bobby and Jack, but it's not higher than 5. I mean, it would just be due to, some guys that are under contracts and they still want to compete for next season. This one is from Levi. Do you think the Royals can finish above 500? The offense is what it is right now, but if they can be average, I think they will win more times than not. That is what we've said for 81 games. Be an average offense, and you will win a lot of baseball games with the state of this rotation and this bullpen. So, yes, they can finish above 500. They cannot do it, though, with the current state of this offense. Next one is from SPP. Assuming we're sellers at the deadline, what do you think the return could be for these 2 trades? Carlos Estevez and a prospect like Ramon Ramirez, Seth Lugo and a prospect like Mozzicato or Kudrna. If it was Lugo and Kudrna, you could get somebody's number 1 prospect and likely a top 50 prospect in baseball. Maybe another name or two that's major league ready at that point in time. As for Estevez and Ramirez, yeah, you could get something. I'd have to go back and check what the Phillies gave up for Estevez when he was getting moved from the Angels, but he was an impending free agent. You're having somebody likely take on the rest of that contract, which is why I don't think it's likely that he's dealt. If they are buyers, I do see them trading one of those catchers this year, just because they're going to need a pretty big chip to boast to other teams if they want a legitimate offensive threat in return. One of those 3 catchers is probably being asked about a lot if the Royals are trying to buy, and we'll see if they float out some of those names the closer we get to the end of July. KC Preds fans question, do you think the hyper-aggressive hitting philosophy the Royals have adopted has anything to do with playing at Kauffman Stadium? Maybe a little bit. I know JJ McCullough said that they're never going to assemble a team that's just a bunch of home run hitting sluggers in the lineup. They want to have guys that have speed, good defense, and can put the ball in play. I believe it has a little bit to do with it. If they played in a smaller ballpark, had a shorter porch, you might be trying to go after some more power bats because you can hit a lot of home runs. But it's just a philosophy that needs some slight adjusting, in my opinion. You can't be that over-aggressive and get these results you keep getting and have been getting for the better part of 81 games. Parker's question, how many moves do you think the Royals will make? Keep up the awesome work. Thanks for the kind words, Parker. I'm going to go with, if they're buyers, 3. If they're sellers, 2 would be my opinion. But I think they'd be big moves if they were sellers. Bobby Wood Jr. is the GOAT's question. I saw somebody suggest that we trade one of our lefties from the bullpen for a hitter. I don't think that is a good idea. It just wouldn't be the bat that you're expecting. If they traded Serpa or Daniel Lynch, you're not getting a huge return there just because they're a reliever. They're a reliever and they're medium to high leverage guys. Those are not the big fish that you'd be trading out of the bullpen. Jay's question, thoughts about potentially acquiring Luis Angel Acuna for Lugo and another player. I like him. He's not having a great season. I would like to go after more of a legitimate bat than he is. Maybe he does turn into, a Ronald Acuna type just to play on with the last name there. But, it'd be an upside move, and I could see him fitting with the Royals. But I feel they should go after somebody that is a little bit more of a threat right now offensively. Blake's question, do you think Alex Zumwalt listens to our podcast to fuel himself? I don't know if he listens to the podcast, but I'm sure that he could see some of the tweets out there that we put out during each and every game, at least after them. Hopefully not during the game, seeing what's being said on Twitter. And we'll get to Kingdom Cave here with Carter Jensen looking to be a candidate to make the roster next year and Salvi showing no signs of retiring. Do you think we could see Freddie and Lugo dealt together for a bat with a control like Duran or Ward? I don't see that type of move being able to get it done. I'm losing a lot of hope that Taylor Ward will ever be a trade chip, and the Angels are 500, so they're likely going to be buyers at this point. As for Jarren Duran, it's going to take a lot more than that. It's not a bad idea. I'm sure people are wondering about the catchers in this organization and what they can do with the overcrowded room. If Freddie Fermin is dealt, I'd imagine it would be in the offseason because Carter Jensen just got to AAA. But with a good spring, who knows? Maybe he could make the roster on opening day. And lastly, Connor's question, if the Royals decide to sell, which three players are most likely to be dealt? Seth Lugo, Michael Lorenzen, and John Schreiber would be the three, just because they would be coming up on contract years. They're going to be free agents. Those are usually the first guys that you'd be looking to move. Well, that'll do it for another edition of Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jack Johnson. Thank you for making Locked On Royals your first listen today. For your second, check out the all-new Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all season long. Get local analysis on a national scale and find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Chance will be bringing you the postcast tonight, tomorrow, and Sunday, but we will be back on Monday recapping the series against the Dodgers and previewing the upcoming series with the Seattle Mariners. But until then, you take it easy, Kansas City.